Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. Today's video is going to be my review of the game's 5 story adventurers, along with suggested builds at 3 levels of investment: low, medium, and high. These characters are obtained as free 4-star units by Chapter 2 of the campaign, and this video won't contain any other story spoilers. Analysis is my own, but once again, data for this video come from the Gamepedia wiki and GamePress. Links and credits are in the description below. With that said, let's get into the first character we'll be discussing today, Jeanne, the Prince, the game's protagonist. I'll start with an overview and general review before jumping into builds. Jeanne is an attack role, flame element, sword user. Among 4-star and 5-star flame units, Jeanne's total stats are the lowest, with a max strength stat of 464 and a max HP of 693. So Jeanne isn't the strongest when it comes to pure stats. Mikoto and Ezzelith certainly outclass him as 5 stars, and Karl and Vanessa both have more HP and strength than him as 4 stars. If you pull Karl or Vanessa, they will almost certainly outperform Jeanne in most situations. Jeanne's ability and skill set is a mix of these two units. Jeanne shares an AoE skill and Dragon Haste co-ability with Karl, and shares a defense down skill and stun res ability with Vanessa. Despite his low stats, however, Jeanne does have a few notable abilities. For one, his Dragon's Claws ability is fairly rare, shared only with the 5-star water unit Siegfried, and it boosts Jeanne's strength for the remainder of the quest every time he shapeshifts, up to 3 times per quest. Of course, it would be nice to have Dragon Claws 3 like Siegfried, but Jeanne only has level 2. The other ability that sets Jeanne apart and is truly unique is his player EXP boost, of plus 10% per quest or plus 15% per quest once upgraded within the final ring of his mana circle. Player level caps at 150 and determines your maximum stamina, friendless size, and Halidom building restrictions. In my experience, player level progression starts to slow down a bit around level 60, and player level experience tables show the road to level 150 steepens increasingly, so help there is great. For that reason alone, Jeanne's use is justified anytime he can be included on a team without hampering your ability to clear the quest you're targeting. That also means that keeping Jeanne fairly strong should be at least somewhat of a priority. More generally, he's also a fine addition to round out flame teams. Jeanne will likely perform better than any 3-star flame unit unless you've already invested in them significantly. Now let's take a look at a few builds for Jeanne, starting with a low investment option. My low investment choice has 20 nodes of Jeanne's mana circle unlocked, a 3-star weapon equipped, the 5-star raid dragon Pele, and a free 4-star worm print from Treasure Trade and the Imperial Onslaught. At 20 nodes, Jeanne can access his 4-strike and both his skills, Blazing Circlet and Exalted Fire, at level 1. He has his player EXP plus 10% ability, plus Dragon's Claws 1 and Stun Res plus 50%. Stun Res is useful for challenging Midgard Sormer in the Dragon Trials, and that's the idea in mind behind Jeanne's Wormprint as well. The Great Worm Midgard Sormer Wormprint will increase Jeanne's bulk against Midgard Sormer, as well as his broader survivability on quests with many wind foes. Appropriate since you'll most want to use Jeanne on a flame team against wind enemies. Pele provides a plus 20% strength boost or a plus 25% once fully unbound, making her a superior choice to Brunhilde, whose boosts are each 5 percentage points lower and whose overall stats are worse. Just make sure to pick up as many copies of Pele as you can in the ongoing Loyalties Requiem raid. If you're watching this video later on, then Brunhilde is your best secondary choice. Poor Brunhilde, we still love you. Finally, for weapon, among the 3-star non-elemental options, I would suggest Broad Edge over Ensorcelled Sword, since the former provides a different AoE with its skill, while the latter's hit pattern is the same as Blazing Circlet. I don't recommend investing in a 3-star elemental weapon, since you are better off using a 4-star weapon than spending so many resources on one of those. All in all, this build isn't bad if you're just starting off, or want Jeanne to round out a team of stronger flame units. It's particularly effective against Midgard Sormer, but fairly decent on any win quest. Next up are the medium investment builds. These builds are as far as we can take Jeanne without kindling him to a 5-star, and all 4-star worm prints, dragons, and weapons are within my consideration. With 40 nodes unlocked, Jeanne gets Blazing Circlet level 2 and Dragon's Claws 2, as well as Stun Res plus 100%, and upgraded 4-strike and Exalted Fire level 2. My first build is about pure offense. To realize Yuden's potential as an attacker, the 4-star Flame Dragon Ifrit is a better long-term choice than Pele. Ifrit's plus 30% or plus 45% boosts to strength and overall stats simply surpass those of Pele at their maximum. For 4-star weapon, I suggest Blade of Glory since its stats are more aggressive and it provides Yuden another offensive skill. Finally, I recommend the 4-star Wormprint Flower in the Fray to enhance Yuden's skill and critical damage. My second build is more of a utility or support build. This build works well if Yuden is on a mixed element team where his primary purpose is to provide his player EXP boosts. The 4-star Flame Dragon Phoenix is incredible and one of the best dragons in the game thanks to her healing skill. I like pairing her with Yuden's Dragon's Claws ability and Dragon Haste co-ability, plus the 4-star King's Countenance Wormprint for its shapeshift prep of plus 5% or plus 8%. Finally, Gilda Sword on a build like this helps Yuden survive longer with its decent HP and self-heal skill. Lastly, a high investment build. You should probably only consider this if Yuden is your favorite character, or if you already plan to promote Yuden to 5-star to bump his player EXP plus 10% to 15%. There's honestly not much to decide here. Agni is clearly the best 5-star Flame Dragon, providing a massive plus 40% or plus 60% boost to Yuden's strength. Leviathan is the highest might weapon Yuden can use due to its fire attunement, and since it grants Yuden another offensive skill, a Wormprint like Valiant Crown is a good choice, especially with teammates who can buff defense to trigger its strength double buff ability. And that's all I have to say about Yuden. He isn't an amazing unit, but you're probably going to want to use him for his player EXP boost, if nothing else. He's no slouch in rounding out a flame team and against enemies who inflict stun, but his overall potential is limited by his fairly low stats. He's versatile enough to pair up with any teammates since his kit is fairly self-reliant. Just avoid doubling up on co-abilities since teams only get the higher of those two, and you should be fine. Next up, let's talk about Elisande. She's a support role water element lance user unlocked in the first chapter of the game's campaign. Elisande's stats are, once again, not great. She's slightly tankier than Prince Yuden with 728 max HP, but she also has lower strength at a max of 445. All 4-star water units summoned from the gacha pool, namely Karina, Thaniel, Luther, and Orsum, outclass her in both HP and in strength. The other free 4-star water option, Celiera, has more strength than Elisande, but at the cost of lower HP. Burn Res and Stun Res are also fairly unremarkable abilities, even if Elisande's co-ability of HP plus 7% at base is decent to good for team survival. Thankfully, Elisande has a rare skill and a rare ability that do set her apart, even if they may not fully redeem her. Thanks to Brave Bastion and buff time plus 20% or plus 25%, Elisande fills a unique role. Eileen, a wind unit, is the only other holder of buff time up, and no other water units can boost team strength like Elisande can with Brave Bastion, except the 5-star exclusive lance user, Xainfried. With a better HP up co-ability and higher stats, Xainfried is almost strictly better than Elisande if you do happen to have him. Unfortunately, Elisande's low stats mean she is very reliant on an effective team in order to truly shine. Despite this, if there was ever a time to build her up, it would be now, for the ongoing Flame Raid, Loyalty's Requiem. She is still a better pick than most 3-star water adventurers, and teammates with skills whose damage scales with buffs, like Xander or Karina, will enjoy Elisande's support. Let's begin by looking at a low investment build. 21 mana circle nodes unlocked, the 4-star Story Dragon Mercury, a 3-star weapon, and the free 4-star Wormprint from the ongoing raid, Paladin Defender. You may be wondering why I suggest unlocking exactly 21 mana nodes. Well, this is the minimum investment I suggest for any character you have other than the protagonist, Yuden. This is because the final chapter of each adventurer's side story is unlocked in the 3rd ring of their mana circle, and viewing it grants you the game's most important free-to-play currency, Wormite. So the 21st mana node here is a very specific one, the one that unlocks a new adventurer side story. Otherwise, this build is fairly basic. Elisande will have unlocked burn res plus 25%, buff time plus 20%, her 4 strike, and level 1 of her 2 skills, Brave Bastion and Hollowed Waters. Mercury will boost Elisande's decent HP, but not shore up her low attack, unfortunately. Mailbreaker is chosen over Drill Lance as the 3-star weapon since it provides a spin attack which Elisande lacks. Paladin Defender is chosen for its skill prep plus 10% or plus 15% boost, but the Great Worm Brunhilde Wyrmprint is viable, if not better on flame stages and when facing Brunhilde herself. If you are controlling Elisande with this build, you should try focus on survival and let your allies deal most of the damage as you buff up their strength with Brave Bastion. Next up, a medium investment build. This represents the strongest Elisande can be before being promoted, with all 40 nodes of her mana circle unlocked. First, for the choice of dragon. While Mercury just boosts HP and Vojanoi just boosts strength, Poliahu does both. Since Elisande needs both stats, I would suggest using Poliahu, but Vojanoi could be justified as well. Poliahu's skill causing freeze is a nice bonus to have too. When it comes to weapon choice, the 4-star weapon Lance of the Innocent allows Elisande to self-buff her critical rate by plus 10 or plus 15% once fully unbound, which pairs well with her innate ability to increase buff duration and helps her damage output. Sniper's Allure is a good 4-star Wyrmprint with this in mind, since it helps her use her buffs more quickly with skill prep, and Broken Punisher can allow Elisande to finally rack up damage once the enemy is weakened. Timing is key for this build, and you'll want to try buff up just before you break the enemy. Thankfully, the jump motion of Elisande's Hollowed Waters skill makes it easy to enter the fray. Finally, Elisande's high investment build. This reflects her at her maximum potential once promoted. To start with, the choice of dragon between Poseidon and Leviathan is tricky. Leviathan can help patch up Elisande's weak strength admirably with its plus 40% or 60% boost, but Poseidon creates a more well-rounded Elisande with its plus 20% or plus 30% boost to both stats. I lean toward Poseidon since Elisande shines as a generalist. The 5-star Lance Ocean Lord allows its user to heal surrounding allies. That would grant Elisande 1 support skill, 1 attack skill, and 1 healing skill, a fairly rare mix. A 5-star Wyrmprint like Worthy Rivals would work very well here, allowing Elisande to use her skills more quickly and jump in for damage once the enemy breaks. Overall, Elisande is tough to evaluate. Unlike Yuden, her skills and abilities aren't really a mix of other units in the 4-star pool. That's a good thing, and it means she has a unique role to play for those who haven't yet summoned Xanfried. On the other hand, just like Yuden, but perhaps even more so, Elisande is held back by her low stats. She needs help dealing damage, which either means building around that or using the right teammates. In my view, Karina and Xander truly are ideal teammates for Elisande since their skills do more damage once buffed. Pair those up with Thaniel, who heals and buffs defense, and you'll have an extremely potent water squad. Next up is the mercenary Ronzel, also unlocked in Chapter 1 of the game's campaign. Ronzel is a defense role, wind element, axe wielder. With Ronzel's max HP of 756 and max strength of 429, we finally come to a character who holds his own against summonable characters of his element. Ronzel hits even softer than Elisande, but as a wind tank, he has far less competition. The wind summoning pool is less saturated than the water one at 4-star, and the 4 characters aren't very similar to one another. Eleonora and Musashi are attackers with lower HP than Ronzel, and although Eileen exceeds Ronzel in HP and strength, she is a support unit, not a defender. In fact, the only other defender in the wind pool is the 3-star unit Johanna, who uses an axe, just like Ronzel, but her maximum stats are much lower. Even both 5-star wind units, Hawk and Maribel, are ranged attackers, a completely different role than that of Ronzel. So Ronzel is pretty remarkable not just as a story unit, but among all wind units more broadly. Since Ronzel outclasses Johanna in almost all scenarios, Eileen really is his closest competitor. Let's compare the two. Eileen has freeze res plus 50% or 100%, while Ronzel has bog res. Both have Slayer's strength, but Eileen's is locked behind her mana circle's final ring and capped at plus 4%, while Ronzel's is unlocked sooner and can be boosted to plus 5%. Eileen's co-ability raises HP, while Ronzel's raises defense. Both have one area of effect skill and one defensive skill, but Eileen has buff time plus 20 or 25%, while Ronzel has last defense plus 50% in his last mana circle ring. Honestly, the similarities are striking enough that you might lean toward Eileen just because her overall stats are higher. And while that is true, Ronzel's skills do have different properties that help distinguish and set him apart. His first skill, Tornado Bash, is a wind spin attack that draws enemies towards him, perfect for a tank and to feed his Slayer's strength ability. I would say this will generally be a bit better than Eileen's Valkyrie Blast, although the area of effect differs. Ronzel's second skill, Stormwall, grants all allies a shield that nullifies damage less than 30% of their maximum HP one time. Whereas Eileen's skill is a straight percentage buff to defense, Ronzel's functions quite differently. It's difficult to assess the pros and cons of each without having used these skills myself in a variety of situations. A slight bummer about Ronzel's skill is that since it isn't a literal defensive buff, it won't interact with Wormprint and teammate abilities like Strength Double Buff, which match every defensive buff with an equal buff to Strength. At the very least, I can safely say Ronzel is very competitive with other options from the summon pool, which is great considering he's a free unit. But let's go ahead and move into builds. First off, a low investment option. Just like before, this build uses 21 mana nodes, a 4-star Story Dragon, a 4-star Wormprint from Treasure Trade, and a 3-star weapon. Whereas Yuden and Elisanne have superior options from the current raid event, Ronzel is stuck with Midgard Stormer as his best low investment dragon, and Great Worm Mercury as his best low investment Wormprint. Although, for more advanced players, let me just tease that there may be a better 3 5-star Wind Dragon that Ronzel can use instead. Coupled with his inbuilt Bog Res, this set certainly isn't bad for facing Mercury in the Dragon Trials or when challenging water-based maps. For 3-star weapon, I would choose Juggernaut over Ennobled Axe to double up on Ronzel's outstanding Tornado Bash skill. Next, a medium investment option. As before, this represents the pinnacle of Ronzel's capabilities as a 4-star adventurer. For dragons, your 4-star win choices are Streebog for more tankiness or Roc for more damage output. I lean toward Roc since Ronzel's HP is already his stronger stat, not to mention Roc's skill inflicts stun, furthering Ronzel's utility in crowd control. The 4-star weapon and Wormprint combo I like best is Souvenir Axe with Sisters of the Anvil. Souvenir Axe allows Ronzel to buff his own defense, increasing his sustain as a tank, and Sisters of the Anvil strength double buff means he'll also be raising his strength at the same time. Finally, if you go all the way and promote Ronzel, here is a high investment build. Your 5-star dragon, Zephyr, has a stun skill similar to Roc, but with higher stats and a larger buff to Ronzel's strength. The 5-star Axe of the Southern Cross provides Ronzel another offensive skill. And finally, I'd suggest Tough Love for the 5-star Wormprint slot. While I wasn't loving Tough Love in my recent showcase review, I do like it on Ronzel. Its last offense ability isn't quite as harsh on a character whose HP is so high, not to mention it pairs nicely with Ronzel's built-in last defense ability. Besides that though, its stats and skill damage up ability are just all around solid. Let me wrap up Ronzel by saying this. Ronzel has a unique stat spread and not a whole lot of competition for what he's trying to do within the wind element, but it's important to keep in mind what that is. As a short-range tank, Ronzel's playstyle will differ from Yuden's or Elisanne's. He'll be able to draw aggro and take hits, but you'll want to pair him with teammates who benefit from Ronzel taking the pressure off. Wand or bow attackers who can sit back and combo on enemies while Ronzel distracts them are some of his best teammates. This means, among wind element adventurers, Maribel, Hawk, and Eleonora are great companions for the big guy. But now, let's move on to Cleo, the last character you meet in Chapter 1 of the campaign. She's a healer type, Shadow Element staff user. Cleo, along with Edward, is one of 2 Shadow healers in the game. Her max HP of 739 and max strength of 432 are worse than the other 4-star Shadow adventurers, Orion, Kleiman, and Berserker, but her role is different enough as a healer that she still has a unique use. Edward, as a 3-star, has worse stats and generally worse abilities than Cleo, making her the de facto Shadow healer in the game. and that's a position she fills well. Cleo's Elder Cure skill heals HP and removes paralysis, and benefits from her healing potency co-ability. Her defensive buff skill, Ancient Aegis, makes her and her allies harder to kill, giving her more time to heal, and triggers any double buff abilities on her team. Paralysis res is fine, and Cleo's third ability boosts her defense by 8% whenever her HP is above 70%. That's synergistic with her overall game plan of buffing defense and keeping the team's HP high. From personal experience, I can say that Cleo can be very hard to kill. Cleo's real weakness then is her lack of damage output. Especially on maps with time limits, Cleo's teammates are going to need some real firepower to compensate for her low DPS. But let's take a look at some builds. First up, low investment. Again with 21 nodes, a 3-star weapon, and 4-star Story Dragon and Wormprint, this time Zodiark and Great Worm Jupiter. As before, this type of build is most appropriate for handling quests of the opposite element, light in this case. To help compensate for Cleo's lack of attack options, I recommend Staff of the Horned Snake as her 3-star weapon, especially since the alternative, Long Ankh, is a self-buff for defense that's already available to Cleo via Ancient Aegis. Next, a medium investment option for Cleo, once again reflecting her full potential at 4-star rarity. Among the 4-star Shadow Dragons, Silk is the preferred choice since she grants a boost to both HP and strength, not to mention her skill reduces enemy defense, helping Cleo's team get in damage. For a 4-star weapon, Cleo's options are limited, and neither of them include an attack skill. Beauty's Balm lets her heal the team member most in need, while Staff of Fortune increases her strength by 25 or 30% for 5 seconds. Since Staff of Fortune's buff duration is so short, I suggest doubling down on Cleo's utility as a healer with Beauty's Balm. Finally, given this is a focused healing build, I'd recommend the 4-star Wormprint Destiny's Hand, which offers extra healing potency and skill prep to get heals off faster. Finally, a high investment build. Nidhogg is the only 5-star Shadow Dragon, but he's a powerful one, boosting both stats and inflicting blind with his skill. The 5-star Shadow attuned weapon Caduceus gives Cleo an offensive skill, which is useful for clearing enemies when she gets ganged up on. And last but not least, the 5-star Give Me Your Wounded Wormprint improves Cleo's healing and makes her even more tough to defeat when she's at full HP. Overall, Cleo, like Ronzel before her, isn't bad for a free unit, mostly because few other Shadow units fulfill her role. Even with a lot of investment, she won't become a powerful damage dealer, but she is very good at surviving and doing her job of healing and buffing defense. Ancient Aegis can trigger the double buff ability of her allies, helping compensate for her own weak offense. Just be aware that when it comes to timed maps, health and survival aren't the only factors. Finally, we move on to the last free adventurer from the story. Obtained early in Chapter 2 of the campaign, Luca is a light element support role bow user. Luca has 743 max HP and 439 max strength. And unfortunately for Luca, there are 2 other light support archers, one of whom is almost always strictly better than him. Ron, a 4-star light support archer, has higher HP and strength than Luca, not to mention a better base kit. If you've already summoned Ron, you can almost tune out now. Melora, the other light support archer, is a 3-star who has worse stats than Luca, but does come with the valuable Broken Punisher ability. Overall, Luca sits in between the two, probably better than Melora, but definitely worse than Ron. The most noteworthy skill Luca has is Radiant Bonds, which paralyzes enemies once upgraded. Bolt of Light deals light damage in a line, Curse and Poison Res abilities are situational, but okay, and Luca's full HP equals strength plus 10 or 13% ability is very stringent with its full HP requirement. A skilled Luca player may be able to use it effectively, but one hit and it's over without healing. But the major question is why you wouldn't just use Ron over Luca. Ron and Luca have the same exact co-ability, skill haste plus 5% at base, or plus 11% once fully upgraded. Ron's Critter Slayer is just like Radiant Bonds, but it inflicts the superior ailment Stun instead of Paralysis. His Fiend Crush is just like Bolt of Light, but it also reduces enemy strength by 5%. Ron's Poison Res goes up to 100%, while Luca's is capped at 25%. And Ron's Striker's Strength boosts his strength after KOing enemies with Force Strikes, which is more reliable than Luca's full HP ability. To top this off, Ron has Stunned Punisher plus 20%, which synergizes with his Critter Slayer skill. The only other thing that Luca has that Ron lacks is Curse Res, which is rather map dependent, so unfortunately for Luca it's really hard to recommend using him and investing in him. Whereas all the other story characters have something of a niche right now, Luca does not, except to fill out an extra slot better than a 3-star on a light element team. Despite that, let's take a look at a few builds. First is a low investment option with 21 mana nodes, the 4-star Story Dragon Jupiter, the 4-star Wormprint Great Worm Zodiark, and the 3-star weapon Machine Bow to give Luca another attack skill. As always, this build is fine to round out a single element team for facing opposing element quests. If you do have Ron or a full light squad, you probably don't want to invest much more than this. Second, a medium investment build. Since Luca's full HP equals strength plus 10% or 13% is something Ron doesn't have, I try to emphasize that here. For weapon choice, the 4-star bow Flow Little allows Luca to increase his max HP once and heal his own HP on subsequent uses. The 4-star Wormprint Happier Times allows Luca to activate his skills more quickly thanks to skill haste, as well as boosting skill damage when he is at max HP. The 4-star Dragon Lindworm is chosen over the alternative Unicorn since Lindworm raises Luca's attack stat. The key to success with this build will be dodging extremely well and either self-heal or team heal to keep Luca's HP completely full. Finally, a high investment build for Luca once promoted to 5-star rarity. Along the lines of the previous build, I chose the 5-star Wormprint Evening of Luxury to double up on Luca's strength boost when at full HP. The only 5-star light dragon is Jeanne d'Arc, and the 5-star light bow is Thunderbow. But just to be clear, I would strongly advise against promoting Luca unless he is absolutely your favorite unit. Overall, Luca is unfortunately the weakest story character. He can deal major damage when at full HP, so a skilled player can utilize him fairly well. It's just that a clearly better option is out there. If you do insist on using him or need him to round out a team, bring healers and try control him yourself to keep his HP at full. Alright, we've finally come to the end of the video. Let me close with some general thoughts on the story characters. A recurring theme in this video, as unfortunate as it is that Dragalia Lost story characters, and even its free dragons and wormprints, intentionally have lower stats than their counterparts from the gacha pool. This isn't necessarily a bad thing since skills and abilities matter, not just stats, not to mention it does encourage summoning for new adventurers. Some story characters like Ronzel and Cleo currently serve unique roles, but they could get outclassed by new units released on future banners, since their stats are still pretty low. If I had to rank the story characters as of now, I would probably order them like this, setting aside Yuden's bonus to player EXP. First Ronzel, second Cleo, then Yuden, Elisanne, and finally Luca. But regardless of which story characters you want to use, think long and hard before promoting them. Eldwater is a scarce resource, and in addition to being needed for promotion, it's also used to unlock nodes in the final ring of each character's mana circle. For that reason, most players will probably want to stick to something between the medium and low investment builds in this video. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of Dragalia Lost characters in the comments below, and tell me how you plan to use them. Will you be promoting anyone? Is one of these characters your husbando or waifu? Is there another build you'd recommend? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you once again for watching, and